when Kennedy was killed? What happened to the currency that Kennedy created with Executive Order 11110? It was all revoked and bought back up. The day after President Kennedy was killed, assassinated in Dallas, one of the very first acts of Lyndon Johnson as payback to those behind the assassination was to revoke that money that Kennedy had created. When we look at the Q Project, we look at what is happening in the country right now. You have to remember that the central focal point of the whole operation is to reverse the effects of the coup that occurred at the killing of President Kennedy. And in order to reverse the effects of the coup, it's not just a political thing. It's not even just a military thing. It's not even just waking up the American people to what's really going on. It's also about taking the fangs out of these money monsters, getting their fangs out of us as a country where they're bleeding us dry like vampires, taking the wealth out of America, making themselves strong in order to do all their globalist mischief all over the planet. And by the way, what was the problem? Because we're fighting, because this president and the military backing him are methodically dismantling their systems that they've had in place for 100+ years to control us, to manipulate us, to make us do their will with our labor, our sweat. These wizards from the City of London, these bloodline wizards, what is it that they've done? They've tried with impeachment. They've tried with the media. They've tried every way they know how to neutralize what this president is doing and what the people around him are doing. And we've seen all these infiltrators around the president, not just one or two, people embedded in the administration, people that have been planted there for decades with a plan to be available at the critical moment to say just the right thing, to make just the right wrong recommendation, and to steer us again right back into slavery, to shortstop anything that the president and this group would do to regain control of our country again, to get the helm of the ship. What's happening right this second is the result of long planning, just like with the Titanic. Many years in the planning, from the time that the boat was designed, through the accident, through the not having enough lifeboats by intention and then ability to launch them readily, to even handle all the passengers on the boat, the insanity. And of course, at the time, it was front page headlines. People wanted to know who was dead, who was living, who had made it, who hadn't. It dominated the press for weeks, the hearings that followed in later years, trying to get to the bottom of who was behind what hadn't happened. Even the time on the clocks was in dispute. Were they set to New York time? Were they set to London time? North Atlantic time? Part of the reason for the questions about where the Titanic lay on the ocean floor, why it took so long to find it, was because its exact location was muddled because of this time of the collision and where it was at in relation to these other ships in the area that, by the way, while the Titanic is sailing full speed through a known field of icebergs, other ships were at anchor. Nobody else was sailing anywhere. It was too dangerous. This was supposed to be the best, safest ship captain in the world at the time. The admiral's admiral, if you will, Captain Smith. And very highly regarded, just like the ship, the Unsinkable. And in order to bait people into some level of confidence in his abilities. but he was Jesuit. And at the end of the day, who's controlling these bankers even? Jesuits. It's this control of the bloodline families. And by the way, that's not an anti-Catholic statement. This is the army of these people, but there's a component here that is not godly. Take it for what you will.